Okay, Unit 1, Lecture 2A, we're going to go over, or start to go over colonial regions, all right? There's 3 regions you have to know of when we speak about the colonies. That's the southern, the middle, and the New England. We start with the southern because they're the first permanent English settlement would be in Jamestown, and because we're from there, all right? Virginia's in the south. Okay, so some things to understand. I'm going to throw up a whiteboard. Here you go. Some things to understand while we go through Lecture 2 here. Economic and political institutions in the colonies develop in ways that are either typically European or distinctively American, as climate, soil conditions, and other natural resources shape the economic development of each colonial region. The African slave trade and the development of a slave labor system in many of the colonies resulted from plantation economies and labor shortages. Okay, so the South or Southern colonies are 5. Let me try and find a map for you there. Okay, 5 of the original 13 colonies are in the South. All right, we have Virginia, of course, Jamestown, 1607. That'll be first. Maryland, and Maryland's a tricky one. We lump it in the South because economically it's got plantation and slave labor, so it's economically a Southern colony. But religiously, we count it a little more towards the middle because it's tolerant. Okay, a little more tolerant. All right, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Those are the 5 southern colonies. Be aware of them. The main reason people come to the South is economic freedom, a chance to start over. All right, now the Anglican Church, or Church of England, is the main church in the South. Okay, most people keep their allegiance to that church early on. All right, and today that's the Episcopalian Church. Okay, so the South also retains or keeps much closer ties to England, at least among the wealthy, or especially among the wealthy. Okay, now I'm going to go over a few particular colonies. We're going to leave Virginia out, I think, because we covered a lot of that early on, the House of Burgesses, Jamestown, and all that. I want to talk about Maryland quickly. Maryland is a proprietary colony, similar to Pennsylvania, right? Proprietor is an owner. So Lord Baltimore owns Maryland, and Lord Baltimore founds or establishes Maryland as a haven, a place of safety for Catholics. They were and had been persecuted in England and denied certain rights and participatory freedoms in government. All right. I bring up Maryland because you need to know it's a haven for Catholics. You also need to know the Toleration Act of 1649. It's important because it is our first step, or the first case to where we begin the approach towards freedom of religion. Okay, much of the change that we look at in history class occurs gradually, all right, and small steps are taken before we get to big changes and events. Okay, so the Toleration Act of 1649 is our first step towards religious freedom. It grants all Christians, anyone who accepts or recognizes Christ, freedom of worship. All right. Now, it's a first step because if you don't accept Christ or acknowledge Christ, you can still be put to death. Okay. So it's not very free, okay? I look at the Carolinas. I want you to be aware they're royal colonies, okay? So it's different than proprietary. Royal colonies are under the direct control of the king. The purpose of the Carolinas is to grow food for the West Indies, cash crops for export, okay? The British West Indies. And I want you to be aware of Charleston in South Carolina, Charlestown, down there. That will be the largest city in the South for quite some time. That's important. It's one of these trivia things they like to ask you on the SOLs. All right, so Charleston's going to be the first or large city in the South, or largest city in the South. And it's because of trade, all right, and commerce. And South Carolina was very, very wealthy through trade, all right. As we discussed Virginia for the most part last time. So Georgia is going to be founded by James Oglethorpe. I want you to be aware of that. And it had 2 purposes. First, it's a place for debtors to start over. So it used to be back then, if you owed money, you were thrown in prison until your debts were paid off. Okay, so there's a lot of people in debtors' prisons. And it's next to South Carolina, separating it from Florida, which is owned by Spain. So Georgia will act as a buffer or a barrier to protect rich South Carolina from Spanish Florida. And it'll be populated with people out of debtors' prisons, an opportunity to start over. Okay, that's Unit 1, Lecture 2A. We're going to end there. I'll pick up in just a second.